Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. Once upon a time, long ago, there lived a princess called Snow White. She lived with her father, the king, and her stepmother, the queen, in a tall castle which stood at the edge of a deep green forest. Snow White was very beautiful. Her skin was as white as snow, her hair as black as ebony wood, and her lips were as red as a rose. The queen was also very beautiful, but she was proud. She knew that she was the most beautiful lady in the land. The queen had a magic mirror, and every day she would look into it and whisper, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And the mirror would always reply, "You, O queen, are the fairest of them all." The queen would smile because she knew that the mirror always spoke the truth. One day, the queen came as usual to look into the magic mirror. She whispered the special words and waited for the mirror to answer. "Famed is thy beauty, Majesty, but behold, a lovely maid I see. Alas, she is more fair than me. Lips as red as rose, hair as black as ebony, skin as white as snow." The queen stamped her foot. "Snow White is more beautiful," she screamed. "It cannot be." And then she stormed out of the room. From that day, the wicked queen hated poor Snow White. Every day she grew more and more jealous of Snow White's beauty. The queen took away Snow White's fine clothes and dressed her in rags instead. She made the princess do all the cleaning and polishing in the castle every day. And every night Snow White would dream of a handsome prince who would come one day and carry her off to his castle. One morning the queen sent for the huntsman. "Take Snow White out into the forest," she ordered. "I never want to see her again." Next morning the huntsman and Snow White set off into the forest. The huntsman knew that the queen wanted him to kill Snow White, but he loved the little princess and could not do such a thing. "Run away into the forest," he said. "The queen will think that I have killed you, so you must never come back to the castle again." The huntsman left poor Snow White alone. The trees were full of dark shadows and strange noises. She ran as far as she could until she came to a cottage hidden deep in the forest. Snow White knocked at the door, and when no one answered, she went inside. She wondered who could live in such a tiny house. She looked around the room. Everything was so small. There were 7 dusty little chairs at the table. In the sink there were 7 dirty spoons and bowls. And in the bedroom there were 7 little beds. "Perhaps some children live here," Snow White thought. "But how dirty everything is." Quickly she dusted the house and made everything look neat and tidy. Then she was tired, so she lay down to rest and fell asleep. When night time came, the masters of the house returned from work. They were 7 dwarves who worked in the diamond mines deep in the heart of the mountain. They knew at once that something had changed. Their house was clean, the bowls and spoons had been put away, and the floor had been swept. "What's happened?" they asked each other. "Maybe it's ghosts or goblins," said one of the dwarves in a trembling voice. "Careful, men. Search every nook and cranny," said another sternly. Then the dwarves crept into the bedroom. "Oh," they gasped, when they saw the beautiful princess. "Who are you, and what are you doing in our house?" "My name is Snow White," said the princess. "I am hiding from the wicked queen, who wants to kill me. Who are you?" "I'm grumpy. I'm dark. I'm bashful. I'm sleepy. I'm sneezy. I'm happy. "And he's Dopey," they all shouted together. "I'm very pleased to meet you all," said Snow White politely. "If you let me stay here, I'll work hard and keep house for you." The dwarf said that she could stay. "Supper is not quite ready," said Snow White, smiling. "You'll just have time to wash." "I knew there was a catch to it," said Grumpy. "Well, I'd like to see anybody make me wash." "All right," said Doc, and they tossed Grumpy into the wash tub and scrubbed him clean. Then they all sat down to a delicious supper. The princess kept her promise. Every day she cleaned the cottage, made the beds, and baked pies and cakes. The dwarfs had never known anyone who was so good and kind. They all loved Snow White, and she was so happy that she soon forgot all about the wicked queen. Now, the queen had been very pleased when the huntsman had told her that Snow White was dead. But when she next whispered the magic words into the mirror replied, "Snow White, who dwells with the 7 little men, is as fair as you, and as fair again." When she heard this, the queen went pale, for she knew that Snow White must still be alive. "The huntsman has tricked me," she screamed. "This time I will think of something that will make an end of her once and for all." One day, after the 7 dwarfs had gone to the diamond mines, there came a tap-tapping at the cottage door. Snow White opened it and saw an old beggar woman standing on the step. The woman was holding a basket full of apples. "Try my apples, pretty maid," she said, smiling. "They are magic wishing apples. One bite and your dreams will come true." Snow White thought of the handsome prince in her dreams and took one of the apples. She bit into it and fell to the floor. The old beggar woman laughed. "Nothing but a kiss from your true love can save you now, Snow White." Just then the 7 dwarfs returned home from work. As they came through the forest, they saw a shadowy figure near the cottage. "Look," cried Doc, "it's the wicked queen. After her, men!" And they chased her through the forest towards the mountain. The queen ran on, but she slipped on a ledge and fell down the side of the mountain into a deep hole between the rocks. She was never seen again. When the dwarfs came back to the cottage, they found Snow White lying on the floor. They tried everything to wake her, but it was no good. So they built a beautiful bed for Snow White, made of crystal glass and gold. They took her to a special place in the forest and kept watch, day and night. Months passed. Snow White's bed was covered with leaves, then snow, and then the blossoms of spring. Always the princess looked the same, just as if she were sleeping. A handsome prince from a nearby kingdom heard of the lovely princess sleeping in the forest. He rode there to see her. "How beautiful she is," he said, kneeling down to kiss her. The princess opened her eyes. She sat up on her golden bed and smiled. She's awake, shouted the dwarves. "The prince has broken the wicked queen's spell." Snow White knew that this was the prince of her dreams. "Will you marry me and come to live in my father's palace?" he said. Snow White smiled and said that she would. Then she said goodbye to the dwarfs who had been so kind to her. "Don't be sad," she said. "You can come to the palace whenever you like, and I promise to visit you here in the forest every spring." And so Snow White married the prince, and they lived happily ever after.